Hello, hello, you most beautiful stars. Hello, hello. I am Courtney, host of Stars of Morning Light, and this is Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies number 63. Down below is a complete playlist for all that you've missed of the 62 episodes that you can thumb through and enjoy. We normally are either in his biography, um, bringing the humanness back to Edgar, the sleeping prophet, and or one of his source materials. We are still in Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation, ran in 1969, and that is where we're today. Yes. So, beloveds, as so you know, as we finish up this material, Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation, I am then going to move into this. Edgar Cayce with the Earth Changes. I do believe it is time that we start discussing all the changes from the pole shift to what this book is about. It's Earth Changes, historical, economical, political, and global. Pole shift, humans, ascension, all the D's that you could possibly live in within your conscious living experience. So I believe we are going to head into that after the reincarnation material. So I see that Secret Truth and Kim are here today. Good to see you. Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies does normally come out at some point on a Wednesday and sometimes every other Wednesday. I am also usually live Friday morning. This Friday I will not be, but I'm going to release a video about the secrets of cutting energetic cords. Throughout any given year, multiple people contact me about why they'll cut cords, but yet it seems to not work. So then I have to put it into a long, detailed explanation as to all the things in regards to cutting cords to make it very successful. And I decided I'm going to make a video about that so everyone can know and make my job easier that I can just then send that video to whomever's going to ask me in the future. Work smarter, not harder, right? So, good day. I hope everyone is well. And whenever you're catching this, beloveds, peace be with you. You're doing great, stars. A lot of people I know lately have been feeling bouts of fatigue, spinning, dizzy, all sorts of stuff. Please get out there and ground our beloved Mother Earth. Man, she has been moving and shaking and bursting and busting all over the place. Please be with her. Um, I too have realized just recently how exhausted I am because of the first half of 2025 in my personal life. Lucky Stone 888 and I, we are going to be discussing a follow-up video to our 2025 predictions that we did in January. And that's going to be released here in June because we're 6 months in, folks. How is your first 6 months? Let me know in the comments below if you're catching this later. How is your first 6 months of 2025? One of the most grandest transition years that we could possibly even know of. All this talk of karma and reincarnation that we've been doing with Edgar Cayce here, well, it's all being settled, folks. It's all being removed. It's all being shed with the year of the snake. So let me know below how you've been. I see that a happy hippie holistic came in. Good to see you, my dear. I will try to say hello to those in the chat, but I will also need to focus on the material. All right, beloveds. So we actually were not in this chapter. We were in a couple of chapters prior to this. But as I was thumbing through, I decided to skip a couple of chapters because they were mostly about the position the Bible takes on reincarnation, quote unquote. And do remember, Edgar Cayce was a devout Christian. He loved the Christos, the Christ consciousness. And even for him, growing up so devout in the church and wanting to have a position in the church truly, he, when in his readings, it started to come out like, no, 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 reincarnation is a thing. Beloveds, he had to sit with himself. Do know that Edgar Cayce every year would read the Bible. He would start on page 1 on January 1st of each year and read a little bit every single day. So he read the Bible countless of times, right? Because he started that at a very young age, about the age of 13, 15, somewhere in there. And he did it for the rest of his life. When it came into this, his readings were revealing that no, 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 reincarnation is very true. He then started reading the Bible with a new set of eyes. Okay. Not just reincarnation, but also maybe other life forms out there. This thing of the Akashic, right? He started reading with another set of eyes, and there's beautiful source material that we will most likely go through, like Edgar Cayce's material on who is Jesus, who is Christ, what is this stuff. He had to really be with himself. Those 2 chapters that we are skipping over is because we're not 100 years ago. We live in the 21st century. The whole point of starting the Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies was to bring 100 years forward. What does the Akashic say now about things? Um, how have we changed? How can we embrace our spiritual gifts instead of hiding them, right? Or what happened during this spiritualist movement? Okay. So, with that being said, I chose to not go through that material because there's so much already out there for us beloved, intelligent beings that we can search for what's the Bible say now, or why was this stuff left out? It's kind of our experience. So I didn't feel like we needed to discuss it, especially, especially, I was not expecting this. So then I'm thumbing through and I'm like, yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that. And then I get to chapter 12. And the the title of chapter 12 is The Salem Witch Trials, the Puritan Ethic in the American Psyche. And I went, whoa, I know so many of the beautiful stars here at Stars of Morning Light are going to want to know what's said about that. So, welcome in, everybody. I chose to skip a couple of chapters, but that's because, ooh, what fun are we going to have today? And this material that we might be in this a few episodes because there's a lot. Um, for me personally, this has such a great deal amount of opportunity to teach about reincarnation that I was over the moon excited to do this with y'all. I see that Chloe came in. Good to see you, my dear. So, we're going to jump right into chapter 12, the Salem Witch Trials, the Puritan Ethic in the American Psyche. Now, the beginning of the chapter, the writer is just rehashing, let's say, what went on with the Salem Witch Trials. And once again, this was written in 1969. Um, I'm not going to go into the rehash of it all. I'm going to kind of get into, um, well, a bunch of readings about it that Edgar did. People who were reincarnated from that. And I'm sure many people, if I said, give me a show of hands, that if I asked the question, Do you feel like you were persecuted in some way, shape, or form? Persecuted in some way, shape, or form just for who you are in a past life? I can almost guarantee, because of throughout history, I think everybody would raise their hand. So, regardless if it was the Salem witch trials or another aspect during our history, world history, we've all been in some kind of persecution or judgment of some sort. This is fascinating though, because this is going to take a spin as far as replaying out the trials and tribulations and the energies that happen during all that, and the energies you carry with you that you might not even be aware of, that start to play out in current life. This is why we do our soul readings and we do timeline cleanses and whatnot. So I'll read the first paragraph just so you can have an idea where they were going. It is understandable that references to the Salem witch trials of 1692 are given special emphasis in the life readings, in that they were the first examples of religious persecution to leave their indelible strands both on the New World and human souls who were involved. So those inevitable strands, that's what I refer to that 100 years later as karmic residue. It's those energetic strands. Also, why we're going to learn about cutting energetic cords on Friday. It's all that stuff that travels with us that sometimes can be very prominent in our lives, especially if it's in relation to a soul contract, or these subtle themes, these subtle aspects. There is a reason why the world became so heavily influenced with the idea of like justice in recent times. Well, when a soul has lived through persecution and injustice, regardless of race, color, creed, whatever it may be, so many times over, there's going to be a reckoning, right? There's going to be, okay, this has boiled up this karmic residue within all of us for way too long, and now we got to get it out. We have to talk about how all these injustices are happening. So sometimes when we have heavy emotions about something, it might not be completely associated with current life. It's been that under theme, that fuel that starts to boil and build, that in this current life we have to expose it. We get it out. And it seems almost uncontrollable. So here we go, and here's a case study from it. This is from one of his readings, particularly about a person who was a part of the Salem witch trials. Um, and they have a page break here that says the witch dunking case. So for those who might not know, it became very popular to dunk witches in the nearest rivers, creeks, what have you, to get them to, well, admit, to surrender, to what have you. I mean, it was not always just tell us you're a witch. It could have been a lot of different forms. It could have been tell us who is the witch. It could be if you say no, then this can happen. There are so many different cases as to it wasn't just so black and white of yes or no. But the dunking still happened and all the same. So let's read. Some 30 years ago, an IRE member requested urgent help for her sister, Mora, and I'm just going to say Mora, a struggling artist of 33 with a shy, introspective, and somewhat self-pitying nature. Mora had been invited to a Greenwich Village party where she was to meet artists and dealers who would help her forward in her career. She eventually returned home in a state of traumatic shock, which deteriorated so rapidly into self-inflicted violence that it was necessary to confine her to an institution for the insane. So this beloved Mora, which I love that name. I love that name. This beloved Mora, and it said some 30 years ago. So 30 years from 1969. This was in the 30s, right? She's an inspiring artist, young artist. She's invited to a gathering of all sorts of artists and dealers to hopefully get her out into the scene. We're going to learn something happened there. By the time she gets home, she is a wreck. That she starts taking it out on herself, talking, quote unquote, insanely. And so they had to institutionalize her. Do remember, beloveds, that this was like the 30s. I mean, that was definitely the go-to, right? In her delirium, she constantly cried out in terror that someone was trying to hurt her and was in abject fear that she would be visited again by the man in the black umbrella. Her life reading regressed her to New England at the time of the witch hunts. Here, Casey found her as Mana, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. A young girl there, possessing a minor degree of latent talent for clairvoyance, which swiftly brought her to the prisoner's deck or dock. So, as we go through these cases, everyone, for male, female, what have you, they could have shown signs of some kind of psychic ability and great intuition, even because during that time, we're not, us women, definitely, we're not supposed to know anything. So to even present a heightened state of intuition, which there can be such high states of intuition that it is a psychic gift. Okay. So this beloved Mora of the 1930s was a lovely young girl during the Salem witch trials who did have a talent for clairvoyance that swiftly brought her to the dock. They're going to start dunking her. Her sentence was comparatively light. She was condemned to a series of public witch dunkings, but such dunkings were often brutal enough in themselves to cause accidental drowning. And she emerged from her whole ordeal vengeful and so take that in, everyone. So if you had raised your hand, at the beginning of this, somewhere in a past life, something could have happened. And if it's a whole community taking their aggression out on you, which happened to many, there's going to be that karmic residue of rage, vengefulness, bitterness that will carry through. carry through into new lives. So if the Salem witch trials were 1692, and we're talking about beautiful Mora of the 1930s, I am sure she lived multiple lives in between the two. It was there. It might have been a small stream, right, of emotions that were kind of always there, not feeling accepted, right? Something of along those lines. Always had a little bit of a bite or a chip on her shoulder. It came to full fruition into psychosis in the 1930s life. Getting back to Edgar's reading, the entity suffered under those the entity, sorry, when he says entity for the first time, if you're here, that just means the person he's talking about. That is how the Akashic speaks. The entity suffered under those persecutions and often was brought under submission by the experience of dunking. Thus, the entity inherits both good and bad influences from, same in the present. Here we will find the needs for definite stands to be taken. While the entity is afraid of water in some sense, we find that water, or color and water, must be a manner or a means or a channel for the greater expression. She was a watercolor artist. She was trying to work it out through watercolors, which, as many of you understand, that is a very different medium than oil. Watercolor is very different. She was trying to work it out and she didn't even know it. The intensity of her hatred and anger canceled out whatever gains she might otherwise have made by forgiving her enemies. By thus abusing the law of grace, she found herself enmeshed once again in the karmic laws of cause and effect, where a deal of unfinished business awaited her from a life as an artisan in a distant Arabian incarnation. Much disturbance physically and mentally arose through that period. Casey told her, and yet, as the entity found even then a greater outlet for her abilities to depict the beautiful in art, so may she find the same in the present. So we're going to find this girl has actually been an artist many times over. She's worked in watercolor before, but in this life, that watercolor is symbolizing working through the witch dunkings. And this is, I always have to, I get questions, and I get questions a lot when people ask, well, this is going on with me, what past life does it come from? I'm going to say probably 8 or 9 times out of 10, the answer is never just one life. Like this beloved girl, she was an artist in many lives. Um, the with that suffered different tragedies. She probably tried to use her art over and over again, knowing her soul, knowing this is my tool. This is how I sort it all out. This is my therapy. But her not being able to understand the need for forgiveness and grace. So in this life of the 1930s, she is full of anger and vengeance. Full of it. So then Casey even said, when that happens and you're not stepping into the law of grace, You're not forgiving. It's gonna actually backfire on you. We're gonna get into it, folks. Despite this note of hope, the case remained a stubborn one in all its aspects. Mora's physical reading indicated that damage occurred in her spine was causing the insanity, but it was difficult to persuade the hospital authorities either to remove her from the violent and incurable ward or authorize, I'm going to say, chiropractic adjustments. Her weight was down to 80 pounds. In her total derangement, she recognized nobody. However, Edgar was so vehement that she must be helped at all costs that David Kahn, a senior AER member in New York, used all the authority he could to bring to bear. And after a long and laborious succession of appeals, whew, and minor miracles, the girl was eventually restored to sanity and health by the aid of chiropractic treatments. Her career as an artist took on full stature when her reading told her that she had once been an apprentice in the famous artist Peter Paul Rubens, who is an old oil painter. He lived from 1577 to 1640. If you don't know Rubens, please look him up. And that she is, and that if she hewed closely to his school of painting, she her own style would evolve successfully. So she kind of went back and studied what he did because she had once been an apprentice with him. So take that in. We were told she was an artist in some kind of Arabian life. Then she's an apprentice under Rubens, which, wow. She's now an artist again. Oftentimes, what are skills or the things that we just gravitate towards more so than others? Pardon me. I know there's a bunch of beautiful, talented artists in our community. I know that Chloe here gravitates towards crystals. Well, my dear, maybe you had worked within that many times over, that you gravitate towards crystals. There's things that we gravitate towards because A, they had been with us as our tools and gifts and talents over and over and over and over again. Okay. But they're also what our soul puts into the whole frame of our current life to help us overcome whatever it may be. All these quote unquote lessons we need to learn. If we paid attention to more of what brings us joy and practice that and do that, I can guarantee you that therapy is amazing, right? Everyone has something. Everyone has something that they gravitate towards, right? And it's been that same way for many lives. So she was grateful to Edgar. And she also, once she healed, because I'm not going to read how that's written in this book, that would not be good for YouTube. This book was written in 1969. After she was able to heal and come back to her sanity, and she was getting healthy again, putting the weight back on, all of it, she confided in to her sister, that when she had gone to Greenwich Village for that artist conference, that artist gathering with dealers and whatnot, we would put that in today's world that well, they said that she someone used hypnotism to then harm her. I don't know how to put this. So, in today's world, it might not be done by hypnotism. It might be done by all the synthetic ways that we do that in today's world, right? That traumatic experience when she's around all these artists and dealers that are supposed to be helping her to kick off her career triggered all the rage and vengefulness, all the hatred and bitterness and anger from prior persecution. So, also, this is how when we see that people get triggered real fast, we can pause and observe through compassion that it might not have anything to do with this current life. They might have had a seemingly decent life this round, but 3 lives back, whatever just happened triggered that within the soul, triggered that to have a reaction. So I'm expressing this because we can look upon our fellow man with more compassion and grace, the law of grace, because we do not know where this is coming from, always. There's not a soul on the planet today that has not gone through horrific stuff in past lives. And because of the time we're living in, we are all releasing it. We are all releasing it. But do we release it in the law of grace and forgiveness and compassion? Or are we releasing it in anger and chaos and dysfunction and more harm onto others? There's a big choice there. But as those who might choose love over fear or to not react and be more present in compassion, I still witness often that even them, they then judge the others who don't. When how are we supposed to know what's been boiling for hundreds of lives that now is at the top and it's gonna burst? It's pretty unfair to judge those when you don't know and we don't know, right? We have no idea. So it's lovely to know that she wrote Edgar a letter after she got healthy, and the sister was telling her what Edgar said and all sorts of things. See, it does take sometimes knowledge to be able to process. She wrote Edgar a letter, and it stated, I feel so much happier in spirit since I received the reading. It seems incredible that any human being could see and feel things the way you do. The Rubens influence has been noticed in my work before, which makes this very convincing. I shall study up on Rubens' work and period, which I have already done to some extent in Boston. Rubens was a master of the oil. As for the watercolor, it is particular the way things arrange themselves. I have always been somewhat afraid of a lot of water. And yet, as you said in the reading, that's where watercolor painting comes in. Mm. I'll continue to read. No evidence was ever forthcoming to the exact nature of her outrage. This is a small paragraph in terms that I'm not going to use because they're language that was definitely doable in 1969, but we just discussed. If this was indeed so, the incident that happened when she went on that artist retreat, If this was indeed so, could there be a boomeranging here of a vengeful Salem witch, cursing her tormentors with more potence than herself knew she possessed? And did she thus catch herself in her own trap? For of course, for to curse another, for to curse another is to be cursed by self. So, this is a very big teachable moment for me, beloved stars. I hope you are well. Um, when I was live with Lucky Stone this past Saturday, rehashing a 3-year follow-up video about an psychic egregore project that he and I were involved with, and that's how we became such good friends. I had talked about someone who unfortunately made a very bad decision. Basically, put doing evil work out there based out of unfortunate events. Here's the thing, it's exactly what this said. Did Mora, the young girl here, when that incident happened, did all that rage and revenge energy from what happened, not just in the present, but being dunked and dunked and dunked as a Salem witch, did that come out? And I'm going to read it again. If this was indeed so, could there be a boomerang here of the vengeful Salem witch cursing her tormentors with more potency than she herself knew she possessed? So, did all of that pour out and she's ready to take them all out? But unfortunately, if we don't check ourselves, and we might not know the power we hold, even when we feel justified. That's why when I was live with Lucky on Saturday night, I learned a long time ago that in any matter of life, if I start having thoughts of justification, I can justify my actions and words here, justifying, then that is the immediate moment that I need to start checking myself, checking my motives. Because some of us, beloveds, we hold a great deal of power, a great deal of power. So when we feel justified in sending that power out, it actually comes back and hurts us. Because let's say we're talking about the law of three. If you do harm to others, it will come back to you threefold, right? When we think we are justified in our actions, thoughts, behaviors, words, what have you, when we feel justified, it's as if it completely blocks out that it could come back on us. And if our degree, let's say, our amount of vengeance is not proportional to what did occur, and that could happen because we seemingly don't know how powerful we are, I don't strike back ever. Ever. I allow the universe to do as it may, and I forgive and I give that person grace and compassion because usually they don't know any better. I don't strike back ever because I know that my power, if I were to strike back, would be exceedingly more harmful than what had been done to me, just based on who I am. And based on the law of three, I don't want that coming back on me. And so Edgar was trying to explain in his reading, even though tragedy happened, even though horrible things happened, how she might have, we don't have all the details. Remember that, folks. We don't have all the details as to what happened at that artist retreat. Her own power could have come back on her. Hence, so I do hope everybody takes that in, because when we feel justified, that is time to check our motives. That is time to check, is that power boiling over? And where is this truly coming from? What is it triggering? Because as Edgar said, this is in quotations for his words. For to curse another is to be cursed by self. Puts a bit of spin on things, doesn't it? So I see Shelly's in the chat. Shelly first said, can I be releasing it through the pain in my hip? I think she's talking about the painting. Yeah, Shelly, your painting, I'm sure, has been with you many a times over, and you're probably releasing a bunch of stuff through it, not just the hip. Oh, she said most don't understand this, Court. Like the mirror effect, right. Shelly brought up the mirror. Right, right. What goes out comes back, because we're all mirrors of one another. Yes. So, beloveds, that was a beautiful teaching moment, in my opinion, of the power of the law of grace and compassion. No, don't curse yourself because you feel justified. Then the writer goes into two other examples. So we're off Mora. And he goes into two different men that were involved in the Salem witch trials. One on the persecution side, and one on the this is wrong. Let's try to save these people side, right? So two different gentlemen, and what they say here is fascinating. So I'm just going to read. I'm probably not going to read all of it because the author goes into describing more of what happened during the Salem witch trials using great resources, though. I will tell you, I've read these books that the author cited, and they're very good, so I might make note of that for everyone. Two worthies appeared in the readings whose existence can be confirmed, though it should be borne in mind that spelling in those days was often arbitrary. So we're working on who was in attendance in the Salem witch trial, as best as those records are. Casey trying to do the reading, people trying to create, figure out who's who, what's what, as they're doing the research. So we have John Dane, who took part in the general persecution, and Reverend James Allen, a pastor who attempted to defend the persecuted. John Dane was among those who first landed in that country, now known as Massachusetts, and among those called the Puritans. This is from a reading. The entity gained through service rendered to others and through the application of self to the spiritual building in body and mind. For the entity endured much suffering during that period. So, what people may or may not know is those beloved Puritans trying to live in Massachusetts, it was extremely difficult. They were going through some harsh winters. It was very difficult. That is that concept of for the entity endured much suffering during that period. An interesting sidelight to this incarnation is the reading's reference to Dane's previous life as an English monk who had allowed the weakness of flesh, quote unquote, to cause him to break his vows. He was obviously atoning for his life as Dane. So, Dane, one of the first settlers, ends up in the Massachusetts area. So he's a much more grown man. Having harsh goes of it. It really was difficult. In the in a previous life, he was an English monk who quote unquote became weak to the flesh, which means he liked a few ladies probably at some point, right? We're all adults here. And he broke his vows. Okay. I will tell you, most of the time when I have to do a soul or a timeline cleanse for people, what we tell ourselves in life, especially when we are dying, really can emphasize or illuminate all of that karmic residue theme strand of energies um even more so. So let's say we have this English monk who got tempted, became weak, partook in the flesh, broke his vows. Well, I can almost guarantee you that when he was passing on, he probably kind of cursed himself in a way with the words he said about, I will never allow a woman to manipulate me ever again because he's scared of what's going to happen to him now that he broke his vows. If you grew up as an English monk, and I say English for a reason, then you're going to be terrified if you broke all those vows, you became weak in the flesh, you've been living a certain way. When you're on your way out, you're gonna be scared, and you're gonna say some new vows. I've done it. I can guarantee you many of you have done it. I said a vow once that I wish I never said. I've since taken care of it, you know, because it just lived with me then throughout time and space of my lives. I can almost guarantee you when he was on his way out, he was cursing women. It was all their fault. So then now he's in Massachusetts, lives later, and it is struggle and it is difficult. And I mean, more difficult than we can probably even imagine in today's world. Well, I have a feeling he was probably cursing women again because somehow it's all their fault. He was supposed to work out his karma in a positive forgiveness, love, grace, compassion, right? But because that line of energy, that theme, that vow, that anger was still working its way through, seeping through, boiling up. No, all women are bad. So now he's gonna be one of the top guys that's gonna start persecuting all these ladies because of how horrible conditions they have. He did not take the lesson, as people want to refer to it. I call it all his energy, and there's ongoing themes of karmic residue and energetic lines that need to be forgiven. So that's how he fell into it. Then the author, like I said, he goes into wonderful referencing of these gentlemen from different books. One of them is The More Wonders of the Invisible World, published by Robert Calf, sorry, in 1700, and Witchcraft by Charles Williams. Um, that was published out of London. I will say I have read that. I read that at a very young age. I mean, like very young, grade school age. Um, Wonderful book. Um, the other book that will be referenced here was Records of Salem Witchcraft Volume 2 by Elliot Woodward. He used that more so when he was talking about the Reverend James Allen. So let's get into that. The Reverend James Allen was a minister both in Salem and Providencetown. Providencetown was the nearest town close by. In reality, folks, when these men were being persecuted, they actually were just put in jails for very long periods of time, waiting things out. Many of them died in there. Those jails, those were actually in Providencetown. Lucky has spoken about this, Lucky Stone 888. Please go there and subscribe. He has talked about this numerous times on his channel. The Reverend James Allen was a minister in both Salem and Providencetown, and there may be found yet in the outer portion of Salem the moment of the little slab here of Allen, the minister of the church. That was all in quotations, meaning that came from the Akashic. So they were like, so he was this minister all over the place, this little slab on the little dot on the map. Here he is. The reading states that Allen was persecuted for his attempt to defend those of his parishioners who had come to a free land that they might worship their God according to their delicates of their own consciousness. So, Reverend James Allen was trying to say, hey, we're all here trying to do the best we can. The circumstances and conditions may not have anything to do with these women and men. And didn't we come here as Puritans so we could worship and have the religion that we see fit by our soul? The reading about him says, yet the entity within itself gained throughout the experience. Though banished, he was loved by all those whom he served in body and in mind during that journey, bringing to self in his later days the condemnation of all that had known for the persecutions he had undergone. And to this entity, this is the test of fidelity. Sorry. This is a test of fidelity. Wow. Of the soul, even in the present. So this is a test for him, as in, are you going to choose love over fear? Are you going to choose compassion over hate? So it was a test in that life. How are you going to choose? Both these men fared well in their present lives, having retained the compassion and tolerance they exercised during the persecutions. Even Dane, so the first guy, though he had sat on the hanging jury, had dared to be as just as he could, and more than one poor creature must have owed her life to the vote Dane cast in her favor. Oh, so I must have had that a little bit wrong. So, well, not wrong. No, he was actually trying to work it out. So back then, the legal system was not even created here, folks, in the United States. If you're listening from other areas of the world, the legal system was not. It was still very much under kind of ideal of the English. And so were there trials? Yes. Was there a jury? Yes, but you would have people that would be voting for right or wrong. It would not be balanced. How would I say that? In today's world, we have a jury of our peers. Back then, you didn't have to have that many, and it did not need to be so balanced. So Dane, even though he was on the persecution side, saying these women, they have now said that there were a few that he went, no, it's not them. No, it's not them. And isn't that more likely the case in everyone's life? That if we're living with these quote unquote karmic lessons and we don't really know where they're coming from, there's going to be an awful lot of times we start making the same mistakes over and over again. But then all of a sudden, because we're human, we get to surprise ourselves and we go, no, that one's not a witch. No, leave her alone. No, that one's not a witch. These other 11, yeah, they definitely are. But these two, they're not. Isn't that feel in your senses that that is how most of us live our lives? And we're not even really sure where to identify our rhyme and reason as to why and how, why we keep making the same mistakes, and why all of a sudden one day, if we've been going left the whole time and left the whole time and left the whole time, we wake up that day and we choose to go right. I had a professor in college who, oh man, all semester long, he would say it over and over again. And I didn't really get it until I think almost graduation of college. He would say constantly that the greatest thing about being a human is that we have the capacity to surprise ourselves. He would talk about how all these other species, the animals, what have you, they don't really have that. They don't really have, my dog is not going to wake up in the morning and start doing something vastly different than any other given morning. He's a four-legged. He's going to do pretty much the same thing. Creature of habit. Humans, though, because of our conscious awareness, all of a sudden we can exercise our free will and go, nope, she's not a witch. Nope, I'm going to choose differently today. It is the best thing about being a human. And usually we have to make so many mistakes over and over again for us to even become aware of there's an opportunity. I do have a choice here. I can choose differently. It's lovely. So both of those men were working some stuff out. Um pardon me. These lights are starting to get hot. Mm. And the beautiful Reverend James Allen had clearly lived through enough lives to make those choices. I Because he ended up being persecuted because he was trying to save people. And he took that the soul within him said, so shall it be. I'm choosing correctly. I want to do one more here, folks. I know we're at the top of the hour. Thank you for sticking with me. Um, I am Courtney, host of Stars of Morning Light. Please share this out. Share, subscribe, enjoy. Give me that like button, folks, so the algorithms can pick it up. This one is fun, and so I kind of want to leave us on this fun one. Wow, wild. This, it has a page break that says, "The crows come home to roost." Next, we come to a complex case which might have derived from the pen of Poe or Hawthorne. In the early 30s, a reading of Ezra Brandon, age 35, married with a young family, overlapped that of Marion Kramer, spinster a few years older than himself. So we have two readings that are overlapping. That happens sometimes. Um, I will tell you personally, when I'm doing a reading for someone, and then all of a sudden, whoa, this boyfriend, this partner, whomever comes into frame, I don't go fully into their story because it is based on permission, right? But of course, I'm going to be seeing what's going on, right? And I can answer questions of like, yeah, y'all have done this together a few times because I see it through the eyes of whomever I'm reading for. So we got this younger gentleman. They're going to call him Brandon here. His first name was Azra, who is, yeah, he's 35, married with a young family. And then you got this older lady, single, Marion Kramer, and somehow their stories are connecting. Brandon was suffering from psoriasis, brought on by a back injury, but his physical reading had done much to alleviate it. Marion was dabbling was was actively dabbling in the arcane, possessing a slender gift of genuine clairvoyancy. She was spreading it around, quote unquote, by a dramatic use of automatic writing and impressive sessions with the Ouija board. So this is also turn of the century spiritualist movements where sloppy magic was all over the place. Her nature was restless, mischievous. Her regard for the feelings of others was nil. When she met Ezra Brandon, she developed a sexual obsession for him to which he responded. Directing her concentration to his weaknesses. That's the way to put it. I'm going to read that again. Oh my goodness. Directing her concentration to his weaknesses, seducing him. Oh my goodness, that's great. She soon befuddled him with her dominating personality. The Ouija board assured him that they were soulmates who belonged together and urged him to free himself from his marriage ties. Wow. Wow. So, this older lady who is mischievous and really don't care during the spiritualist movement is using all sorts of different stuff to manipulate folks. And she's like, wow, I am very attracted to you, Brandon. And she manipulates, and shows some leg. And he falls for it. Both of them discard the warnings. Discard the warnings in their readings. So Cayce gave them readings. Brandon divorced his wife and deserted his family. The moment he and Marion became man and wife, misfortune, which had till then remained obstinate, which is a weird word to put there, distant on him. Not only did he Not only did his livelihood crumble under a series of disasters, his ill health returned, never to leave him again, and eventually to bring his life to an end. On the face of it, this was the kind of dreary tragedy that occurs every day at all levels of society. But in this case, it was the playing out on on an unsavory relationship which had begun in Salem nearly 300 years before. Mhm. There the couple were again man and wife, but the man, as Jacob Bennett, persecuted the woman accused of witchcraft with unwholesome zeal, making no exception of his wife when she was discovered to be one of the victims. Ah, and she was dipped, the witch dunking, and once put in the stocks, which is the jails, for her activities. So these two had been married in Salem, and the moment his wife's name started being said, he didn't try to support her. He went, "Uh-huh, her zeal is too much." Now, zeal, folks, is actually somewhat of a heightened passion, love of something a grand form of love. So, she could have been just a passionate woman, and in any form. It might not have been just sex. It might not have been it could have just she was a passionate woman. She might have spoken too much, and he did not try to save her. Well, now, 300 years later, mm, both Marion Kramer and Ezra Brandon had returned with positive potentialities. They came back in their reincarnation 300 years later, which I'm sure a bunch of lives in between, with positive potentialities. We all do. Marion was told that her ability could have been constructively channeled into some form of lay therapy, working in conjunction with psychiatry. And Ezra was told that his remorse for his intolerance in Salem might be easily directed towards social and religious work in his life. Edgar Cayce's reading said, "No, you stay married to your wife. Marion, you go and have a successful career helping people with your gift instead of exploiting them and manipulating them. Ezra, you can, quote unquote, forgive and do right in this life and be there in service of others instead of allowing supposedly the ones closest to you to be taken down." It was already stated they did not listen. That Brandon left his family, deserted them, and the moment he got with Marion, all the things that were kind of at bay, all the energy that was at bay, potentialities. We have a million different kinds of potentialities in every life. Some good, some bad, some indifferent, some neutral. The bad ones were at bay, but because they didn't listen, and here they are. And his life took a big old turn. Hmm. What reshackled them to each other and wrecked their present lives then? Remember, quote unquote soulmates, they're kind of just trying to keep working it out. But we also kind of, that tether, that shackle, that energetic cord. Hence the video this Friday coming out about the secrets to cord cutting. Clearly, the incapability to forgive on Marion's part, the desire to be vengeful for the cruelties in which her husband had played so large a part as Jacob Bennet. By reverting to the life in she also had a life in Greece. By reverting to a life in Greece, which she had wasted gratifying the flesh when she had possessed unusual physical beauty, she had used a purely sexual coercion to entrap him. So apparently, this sounds like maybe they were together in Greece, then they're together in Salem, now they're together in the 30s, and they just keep bouncing back and forth this weird boomerang. Where's the forgiveness? We're probably all doing it to each other. So she did it to him in Greece. I'm going to use my beauty to coerce you and entrap you. And then they're together in Salem, and he's like, I don't care what happens to you, female. Peace. And now they're together again in the spiritualist movement of the turn of the century. And she's like, I'm going to use my beauty and my talents now because you done called me a witch. I'm going to show you how much of a witch I am. She's then using her stuff again. I'm explaining what I've already read because y'all, this is going on all the time. Look around at your life. Look around at everybody else's lives. This is what we do. It is what we do because we are trying to get to the forgiveness of all, compassion to all, law of grace, and why he had passively allowed her to tear his life to pieces. He had been on the mend physically, so she got him when he was weak. He was not unhappily married though. It was almost a passive submission to destruction. No free will was used, indeed, it was abused. In this atmosphere of annihilation, the law of grace could not exist. Therefore, both of them were left to the tender mercies of the law of cause and effect. So, beloved friends, I am always talking about in the higher consciousness levels, let's say, of 7 and higher. The law of cause and effect is present because the law of cause and effect is everywhere, right? It's part of everything. Is it used? Is it a symptom of 7th and ninth higher dimensional living experience? No. Why? Why, you ask? Because in 3 that most people are living in now, and in 5 is when we start laying down the judgment, right? So the more we're practicing laying down the judgment, the more we're elevating our consciousness, the more we can observe and witness our lives and others through compassion and the law of grace and forgiveness, the more we're laying down the judgment. The more we're doing that, the more we're freeing ourselves from this pattern of cause and effect attached to the old recesses of karmic energetic residue. Okay. By the time you get to 7 to 9, does it exist? Yes, but are we utilizing it? No. Are we trapped in it? No. Because we know that we can just create a new cause. We can forgive instantly. We can heal instantly. We can give someone grace, including ourselves, instantly. So therefore, cause and effect are not really in play. Lower, 3rd and 5th dimensional living experience, it's still a part of the circulation of energy that we're going to experience, right? Hence the day-to-day quote unquote karma that people talk about. Now I want to give some understanding to this in the context of, okay, well, geez, Courtney's talking about past wrongs that we're not even, we don't even know what might trigger us. Past wrongs that might be boiling within us that when they come out, we don't know the potentiality of our own power exercising the flow of that energy. Also, how it could be a low current of things like the John Dane and the Reverend James Allen, a low current of, I'm just trying to do better than I did before. That's it, which is beautiful. Please, everyone, if that's where we're at, I will take it and I will love it and I will nurture it. Let's just do better than the life before, the day before, the minute before. Hallelujah. As far as this last story, I do think they were probably soulmates. Because if they were in Greece together doing that, then they're in Salem doing that, then they're together again. And she and he had so much kind of power over one another, right? In whatever form that might be, in seduction and or authority, like masculine authority, whatever that may be. That kind of energy that boomerangs back and forth and keeps going back and forth to each other is usually a soulmate connection, right? There's soul contracts, which is in regard to people that are kind of in and out. Like, ooh, that boss I had for 5 years was absolutely rough. And it took a lot for me to forgive them in the end. But now looking back on it, I gained a lot out of that experience. That's a soul contract. That is, you had some inner uh, connections in past lives that need to be resolved to help boost you forward, move you on, right? A soul mate, though, that is all right, we're going to kind of always hang out together in some way, shape, or form. We're kind of not going to stray from each other for too many lives. So a soul mate, which can be family members, siblings, dear friends, partners, children, all of that, right? Um, yeah, can there be lives that's like, yeah, we're not together in this life. That's fine. I'm over here doing whatnot. We're going to set it up for future lives. But I would say at least out of every handful of lives, they come together in some kind of way, shape, or form. It could be a brother and sister or a sibling relation. It could be a parent to child. It could be best friends. It could be all sorts of things. All sorts of things. In that last one, it was a beautiful demonstration as to how when unresolved issues within that soul contract, within the soul mate. See, soulmates have a much bigger contract. It's so much more detailed. So many articles, let's say, if we're talking about in law term of contracts, so much fine print. When a soul contract could just be, this is going to happen here, and then we're going to do it again here to let's see if we can both choose differently. Cool. Easy peasy, we're done. Either we choose differently or we don't. Soulmates, though, man, all the fine print, all of the complexities that go into it and how it's shaped and formed, all the themes that end up happening. How do we work through that? If we, as adult human beings here, go, yep, I know I got some kind of soulmate contract stuff going on with that kid of mine, or that partner of mine, or that mother of mine, or whomever it may be. Like, I'm sure I've done this with them before, and we are not getting it right. We, they're still driving me crazy. What is happening here? Right? The law of grace. The law of grace. The law of grace. Forgiveness, compassion. Because we're all just mirrors and souls walking around, really trying to do the best that we can. Forgiveness, grace, compassion. Forgiveness, grace, compassion. I will tell you, some of you know that Brad and I, of course, my husband of now, he and I have done this routinely, right? There's been times that he was my kid who would die, unfortunately, unexpectedly, right? But also kind of my responsibility in past lives. Um, we've been l- lovers that led to our demise because that was not a thing that people should have done at that time. A lot of stuff. We've gone through the ringer. Let's say, and many of you probably have with yours. Children, parents, siblings, partners, what have you. You probably have gone through the ringer in various ways because we're trying to figure it out. All you got to do in this life is tell them, thank you for your service to me. I forgive you for everything, then, now, and future. I wrap you in the law of grace and compassion. Thank you for your service. Because as much as you might think you're a service to them, they're a service to you. And then that opens it up to see things differently. It opens it up to go, wait a minute. If we've been doing this countless of times, there must be a grand reason why we chose each other. There must be some awesome stuff that we are able to come together on. Gratitude, forgiveness, grace, and compassion can change the energies that might have been. And we just keep doing that. And we just keep doing that. In the moment we forgive them, they forgive us. We just keep doing it. And then you can get to that resolve as to why you formed the contract in the first place. And that is amazing. That is amazing stuff. That is rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. So, I love you all so dearly. I love you all so dearly. Um, Beloved Chloe, um, there are many reasons for that too, my dear, I believe. You're not alone in that. Not at all. I'm referencing a comment she made in the chats, beloved. Not at all. Some are designed differently. So, I love you all very much. Have a great week. Once again, Friday morning, I will release a video about the secrets of cutting energetic cords so that can last, so it can happen for you. I love you all. Oh, awesome, Chloe. Good job. Cool. I figured you did. Thank you all for coming in. I know Kim was here, Seeker of Truth, and Chloe. Have a blessed day. Bye, beautiful stars. Enjoy yourselves.